And how did so kind of with the music and stuff, I guess, how did that end up with you moving into technology? What was the bridge?
The bridge, the gap. What happened there?
The singer to CIO. Let's unpack that bit.
The singer to CIO.
Yeah, the singing CIO. Maybe that's.
That was the original title of the second book, but I felt it was a little bit too narrow for people. Too niche. That's it. Oh, okay, so we were talking about this earlier. I've been singing for a good number of years with my then boyfriend who became my husband, and we did a wedding. We were doing covers, singing covers at weddings and at football clubs, their grand final celebrations and things like that. So we're making a pretty good living, actually, a decent living from that. And then we did a wedding, and we'd been doing a lot of covers, a lot of gigs, and the final performance we did, it was a wedding in Patterson Lakes, and there was a fellow there, and I was saying this earlier, this man wanted me to sing Mustang Sally 8 times during the night. And I remember thinking, there is nowhere on this planet that it is right to ask somebody to sing that song 8 times. Anyway, you're getting paid, so you sing. You get paid, so you do what you do. And I got in the car with my husband and I said to him, if I have to sing that song one more time, I think that's going to be the end of me. And he said, okay. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I don't want to sing anymore. And that was the most frightening realisation that I'd come to. I knew that it was coming. I wasn't feeling the joy of singing anymore. Yeah. I was feeling the grind. And when you are performing and doing covers, you have to have a huge discography of songs you need to know. Yeah. And so you spend most of your time learning new songs to stay as current as you can so you can get more gigs. And I just got to a point, I thought, this isn't what I want. I wanted to do my own music, and that wasn't happening. And that realisation hit me, and I was scared. I was really scared because it was like, now what? Everybody knew me as a singer. I was known as a singer. That was what I was known as. And what do I do? And I want to change that to something completely different. And what is that completely different thing, which I just didn't know. But what I did know is that I needed some level of normalcy in my life. Mm-hmm. Instead of playing all night, singing all day and doing that, I just didn't want that. And quite a few of my friends worked in corporate Australia. You know, they might have worked in the mailroom, but it was still corporate to me, and it was something that was very different, very, very different to what I was doing. I thought, I want to do that. Yep. That looks interesting. I had no idea what that was, but I thought, I just want to work in an office somewhere, because that looks really exciting. Now, everyone that's working in an office listening to this is going, it's not exciting, Mary-Beth. But you know what? When you're doing something for so long and then there's no joy in it anymore, everything else kind of seems to be interesting. And I'm curious. I'm a curious person by nature anyway. I read a lot. I like to try different things because I figure, you know, it's like when you throw pasta against the wall. If it sticks, it's cooked. If it doesn't, it falls off. So I kind of do that with my career. And I wanted to try something that was different, so diametrically opposed to singing. And I figured that that's what that would be. Now, I had no idea about where that would be, what sort of work that would look like. Yeah. I had some experience doing little bits of officey sort of work in my background, some transferable skills there. And so I thought temping. Now, for those that are on the call that are younger, that are on this, listening to this podcast, temping, what is it? Think of a contract that's 1 day long or 1 week long, where you're backfilling somebody who's either taken sick leave, in a position like on a reception where they need to have somebody manning that reception desk, or somebody's gone away for 2 weeks holiday and they need to backfill that role. That's what temping is. So you just go into different offices. So I thought, I should do that. So I started interviewing for temping roles. And I think I went to about 30 different interviews and didn't get a lookie. Didn't get a look in, because it was like, but you're a singer. You're a singer. What have you got? And then I went to one recruitment company. And the woman that I sat with said to me, "You look really familiar." And she said, I've seen you perform. And I was like, "Oh, wow, okay, great.
Yeah.
This is what, interview 31 that I'm not going to get? Awesome." Mind you, I have done a lot of auditions and been given like the no. So, you get used to that.
Is there. Yeah.
You kind of, you get quite a thick skin. But it was like, this was interview 31 and I was sort of starting to feel like maybe this was the wrong choice. But she said, "I was always curious as to, what goes into a gig and how you have to do all that work." And she said, talk to me about it. So I talked to her about the relationships that I had to build with my agents, because we had 3 or 4 agents, and she's writing notes down. And then the logistics, like, okay, so I had to, you've got to get all of your sound equipment, because we didn't own that. We hired it for the gig. So we would hire that, and then what would that cost? How big did we need to have the speakers for the room size? So you needed to work all of that stuff out. I worked all of that out, organised the equipment. We picked the equipment up. We did all of the logistics. And then we had to work out, which gigs were the right gigs to do. So if you had a gig that was going to pay you a little bit less, but you got 5 gigs out of it versus one that paid a bit more, which one would you take? And all of those sorts of things. And she's making these notes. And she said, "Wow, that's really interesting." She said, "So you've got stakeholder management.
Yep.
You've got project management, logistics." And she's saying these words and I'm like thinking, I know these are words.
Yeah.
I don't know what she means by them because I hadn't thought of that. But she said to me, "You have," and this is the first time I heard this, "you have transferable skills." And so she put me in my very first temping assignment, which was a 2-week backfill on reception at this little company in South Bank called Apple Computer.
Right.
Not Apple Computers, but Apple Computer. The reason I know it wasn't Apple Computers is because when I answered the phone, the general manager had walked in and heard me answering the phone. I said, "Apple Computers, Mary-Beth speaking." And he called me aside. He said, "It's Apple Computer, no S." And I was like, "Oh, wow, touchy, man. Okay." I'm surrounded by Macintoshes. I didn't know what a Macintosh was. I could barely use a manual typewriter back then. Offices didn't have computers, but this office did. And they insisted that I use this little tool called email. Now, I'm like, I had no idea about what email was. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so hard. Just give me a reception notepad so I can just write down these messages. But I had to answer the phone, then type in to somebody that they'd received a call, and all these things that in 1991 were like, they just were not. Everything was very manual back in the day, but not at Apple Computer.
I was going to ask you, so that was 91, was it?
Yeah, 91, 92, yes, Apple Computer. So I remember getting home and saying to my then boyfriend, future husband at the time, "Oh my God, I was at this place today." And he said, "Oh, where were you at?" I said, I said to him, "It's Apple Computer, not Apple Computers." And he went, "Oh my God." And he was into tech at that time. He was always into like high tech music stuff and into all of that. And he said, "How exciting." And I said, "Not really." I said, "They want me to use this thing called email." I said, "That's not going anywhere. Who's going to use that?" So I'm just going to say this, Anton, I'm not a futurist. Just so anybody listening, Mary-Beth, not a futurist.
Yeah.
However, it interested me. And I started to speak to the people there about what it was that they were doing and what they were trying to achieve. And I was curious.
Yeah.
And I've always had a growth mindset. So every opportunity I had then that enabled me to learn some new tech, something, a new switchboard, a new something.
Yep.
And that led on into my very first role at a company, part of the May Nicholas Group, which were working with the major banks on the implementation of EFTPOS machines.
Yep.
Now this is back in the day when an EFTPOS machine weighed 20 kilos, had to be programmed before it was sent to a shop to be used.
Yep.
So we're talking at the very, very beginning of all of that. And that was where I kind of started in the tech world.
Yeah, right. Wow. Yeah, okay. And I saw that obviously that as that journey kind of progressed, your kind of LinkedIn story, so to speak, in terms of your profile picks up in 2010.
Yeah.
With 2001, with BP.
Oh, yeah.
change management consultant. And it was funny because I was looking at it actually just yesterday ahead of this, and I was thinking, what happened before that? Which is interesting, that the journey you've explained there. But you've kind of arrived there at BP in a change role. So how did you kind of end up in change?
From temp to change.
Yeah, or what enticed you into change? Because you've built your career fundamentally kind of
in the change space.
Around that space. So what?
I like people.
Yeah.
And I was leading a team of drivers at May Nicholas, drivers that were installing EFTPOS machines.
Yeah.
And what I realised was just what it took to actually train them and convince them to do this, because it was completely different to courier driving.
Yeah.
I had to actually interface with a customer and do that sort of work. And I realised, wow, this is really hard. I wonder how you do this better. And I always wanted, and I like to perform, and I've always wanted to perform. And I thought, how can I get more of that into my world? How can I do more performing?
Yeah.
And I thought, training people. And training led on to change. So I did training and assessing, and then I started doing more training work with more drivers, etc. And then as we were, and I had been in transport and logistics for about 20 years in total. Part of that was sign on glass. Everybody who's listening to this thinks that it all started that way, but it didn't. We used to have manual run sheets, pieces of paper that people would fill in, paper consignment notes that you'd have to fill in. You know those irritating customs declarations you've got to put on your postage when you go to the Australia Post? Imagine this in every single thing. So if something went missing, people were there going through files of manual processes. So there came a point where it needed to be, where there was a technological solution.
Yeah.
But you have to take drivers on that journey, because they have to use a device, and their biggest fear was being tracked. We don't want to be tracked.
Right.
And so it required a lot of change management. In transport and logistics, I didn't understand what change management was. So that's what led me to doing courses and to actually start understanding what change was all about. Working out the what's in it for me equation. What does that look like, and how it works for an individual? And that has stood me in great stead in my entire leadership career. Because when you go into a leadership role, you're going to change things. You will. You know, it's not the new broom sweeps clean rubbish. I don't believe in that. But it's that I look at things that maybe aren't working as efficiently as they could be, and then taking people on the journey to change that for the betterment of the organisation, for the betterment of the group, for the team, for the individual. So having that in my background has been absolutely a game changer as a leader.